Okay, so, like, the world never really stops, right? News just keep coming, and sometimes it feels like you're trying to drink from a fire hose.
Absolutely. It's a constant deluge of information.
Exactly. So we're going to break it down, give you the need to know on the major stuff happening globally.
We're talking political clashes, tech, humanitarian crises, the whole shebang.
Yeah, all that. So first up, let's head over to the U.S. where things are, well, a little messy. Seems some top officials in the Trump administration maybe had a bit too much to say in a, get this, Signal group chat.
Oh, this is the one with the journalist, right, from The Atlantic.
Yeah, Jeffrey Colbert.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. So what's the problem with Signal? I thought it was supposed to be, like, super secure.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They were apparently discussing plans for a Yemen strike, like classified stuff, in a chat with the journalist.
Wow. So weapons packages, targets, all that.
Supposedly, yeah, even the timing, like 2 hours before the actual strike.
Oh, that's not good. I can see why people are freaking out.
Oh, yeah. The fallout has been, well, huge. Democrats are already calling for investigations. Schumer's calling it a stunning breach of military intelligence. And the Senate Armed Services Committee is all over it.
I bet. I mean, unauthorized leaks, especially involving military ops, that's a big no-no.
Sure. And Goldberg's even worried this could have put American troops in danger.
Oh, I see. So what's the administration saying?
Well, Trump says he didn't know anything about the article,
Wow.
but his press secretary is defending the Yemen operation.
Hmm.
And then you've got Hegseth criticizing Goldberg, and Johnson basically saying they were just doing their jobs.
It's interesting, right? You've got all these different takes on what's acceptable when it comes to national security and, like, the role of the media.
Totally. And get this, Goldberg says he got a connection request on Signal, didn't even know what it was about at first, but then he started seeing news reports about explosions in Santa, and it all clicked. The timing lined up with what they were talking about in the chat.
Wow, that's wild. So it was real-time intel sharing, basically.
Seems like it. Oh, and a Houthi official later said there were 53 deaths.
Oh, man. So who else was in this chat besides Goldberg?
Let's see, Ratcliffe, the CIA director, Rubio, Secretary of State.
Big names.
Yeah, for sure. And apparently, even within the chat, there was some disagreement about the strike. Like, the account linked to Vance was initially hesitant, worried it wasn't consistent with, Trump's message on Europe and all that, plus potential oil price spikes.
Makes sense. Those are all factors to consider.
Yeah. But in the end, he went with the team, basically. Vance's spokesman even released a statement saying he fully supports the administration's foreign policy.
Covering all the bases. So did they ever figure out how Goldberg got added to this top secret chat?
Well, the National Security Council confirmed it's legit and said they're looking into it.
Makes you wonder.
Right. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the messages also revealed this whole discussion about Europe needing to pay their fair share for U.S. protection, like with shipping lanes.
Oh, that's always a hot topic.
Yeah. And some of the language used, let's just say it wasn't very diplomatic. Talk about a hardening stance on burden sharing.
I can only imagine. Okay, so moving on from the U.S., we've got some major protests happening in Turkey.
Yeah. Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, got detained on corruption charges. And let's just say people are not happy about it.
Yeah, I saw that. Isn't he like a major rival to Erdogan?
Big time. So this whole thing is very politically charged.
Definitely. So what's Erdogan's take on all this?
Oh, he's not holding back, calling the protests evil, blaming opposition parties for stirring up trouble, the whole 9 yards.
Classic Erdogan.
Yep. And the police have been cracking down, using tear gas, rubber bullets, you name it. Over 1,000 arrests already.
Wow. It sounds pretty intense.
It is. But, Imamoglu's denying all the charges, says it's just a way to sideline him politically.
I mean, that's definitely a possibility, given the situation.
Right. And the protests are still going strong, especially around the city hall in Istanbul. Mostly peaceful, but still lots of tension.
So even with the crackdown, people aren't backing down.
Not at all. It's a real show of defiance.
Yeah.
And the CHP leader, Özal, even gave a speech to the protesters, calling it like a stand against fascism and all that.
Wow. Strong words.
Yeah, and he's planning to visit Imamoglu in jail and try to get him released while he awaits trial.
So is this detention going to affect his political career?
Well, that's the thing. Even though he's locked up, the CHP went ahead and symbolically named him their presidential candidate for 2028.
Oh, that's a bold move.
Yeah, sends a message for sure. But the charges against him are pretty serious.
Like what?
Well, there's a whole list, but basically they're accusing him of, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but let's just say they're trying to paint him as corrupt.
Okay, I get it. So, what's Imamoglu saying from behind bars?
Well, he managed to get a message out on X saying he'll never bow and calling his arrest a black stain on our democracy.
Yeah.
Rallying his supporters.
Makes sense. He's got to stay visible.
Exactly. And his wife's been speaking out too, talking about the injustice of it all. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I can imagine it's like a real test of Turkish democracy.
Right. And the thing is, this is the biggest wave of protests they've seen since those Gezi Park protests back in 2013.
Oh, wow, that's significant.
Yeah, people are drawing comparisons.
Yeah.
And it's not just about Mamoglu. They've arrested over 100 other people too. Politicians, journalists, you name it.
Sounds like a real crackdown.
Definitely. But the good news is, even if he's convicted, he can still technically run for president.
Oh, interesting. So this whole thing could really shake things up for the 2028 election.
Oh, yeah, especially since Erdogan might be facing term limits by then, unless they change the constitution, of course.
Always a possibility.
Right. But the Justice Ministry is denying any involvement from Erdogan, saying the judiciary is totally independent.
Yeah, right. I mean, we'll see how that plays out.
Okay, now for something completely different. Let's talk about the Philippines. Has you heard about this Mayor Alice Guo?
Vaguely. Something about human trafficking.
Yeah, and maybe even spying for China. It's wild.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm all ears.
So this woman, she becomes mayor of Bamban, arrives at her campaign rally in a helicopter, promises the world, you know the drill.
Sounds like a typical politician.
Totally. Except she claimed her background was in pig farming, right? But then it turns out she had these connections to some shady Chinese business people. And guess what? They were later convicted of money laundering and, wait for it, human trafficking. The same charges she's facing now.
Hold on, so the pig farmer was hanging out with criminals?
Apparently.
Yeah.
And get this, her whole campaign was all about love, love, love.
Oh, the irony.
I know, right? So he takes office, paints the municipal hall pink, plants flowers everywhere, and some residents were saying she seemed really caring, providing jobs, scholarships, that kind of thing.
So she knew how to play the game.
Oh, yeah, she did. Even got a McDonald's and a Jollibee to open up while she was in charge. Social media loved her.
So how'd she get caught?
Well, it all started with this Vietnamese guy who managed to escape from a place called Neurotechnology Incorporated.
Yeah, ever heard of it?
Right. So the police raid this compound, and guess what? It's right near Guo's office. People think there might have been a tip-off, because when they got there, it was basically a deserted scam hub.
A scam hub? Like what kind of scams?
Well, it turns out Guo used to own the land where this compound was, and she even granted them a business permit. Oh, and her name was on an electricity bill for the place.
Uh-oh. This isn't looking good for Mayor Love, Love, Love.
Nope. So this Zenyuan company, they had a POGO license, Philippine offshore gaming operator.
Yeah, I've heard of those. They're supposed to be like legit online casinos, right?
Right. But it turns out a lot of them were just fronts for criminal activities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this company was running these pig butchering scams, basically online fraud, often targeting vulnerable people.
That's awful.
Totally. And they found all these training scripts in a deserted dormitory, indicating they were forcing people to work for them, like human trafficking.
So this was a big operation.
Huge. And apparently it's something that Chinese organized crime groups do a lot. They use a mix of willing employees and, sadly, trafficked victims.
That's just terrible.
It is. They rescued over 300 foreign nationals from the compound. A lot of them were being held against their will. Apparently, if they didn't perform well, they were punished.
What kind of punishments?
I don't know the specifics, but it wasn't good. And get this, the bosses lived in this luxurious villa with a swimming pool and even escape tunnels.
Sounds like they were prepared to make a quick getaway.
Totally. But the thing is, when Duterte left office and Marcos Jr. took over, the political climate shifted. They started cracking down on these pogo businesses.
So it was bad timing for Guo.
The worst.
Yeah.
Because this Bamban raid, it basically exposed everything. It connected her squeaky clean image with this dark underworld.
Yeah, I see that. So what happened to her?
Well, they hauled her in front of the Senate for hearings. And, oh man, she was a mess. Couldn't remember anything about her past, contradicted herself, the whole 9 yards. They even nicknamed her Amnesia Girl.
So playing dumb.
Basically. But then her former business partners in Singapore got convicted of money laundering, so that didn't help her case. And then she tried to escape to Indonesia.
Bold move.
I know, right? But they caught her and brought her back. And get this, they found her fingerprints on record, matching a Chinese girl named Guo Huaping who came to the Philippines in the early 2000s.
Wait, so she might have a whole other identity.
That's what they're thinking. It's fueled all these spy
I
allegations.
mean, it makes sense. If she was already involved in criminal activity, she could have been an easy target for recruitment.
That's one theory.
Hmm.
But not everyone's convinced. Some people think she's too high profile to be a spy, and Bam Bam's not exactly a strategic location. But then you've got Senator Gatchalian saying these transnational criminals, they know how to use local talent and exploit the weaknesses of the Philippine system, especially with these POGO licenses.
That's a good point.
Yeah, the whole mess. And in the end, Marcos just banned all POGOs. They think Guo's case had something to do with it.
Wow. So what's the latest with Guo?
Well, they whitewashed the municipal hall, took down all the flowers, Bam Bam's got elections coming up, and Guo's facing 6 trials. She could be in prison for decades. They've also banned her from running for office again.
Wow. Quite a fall from grace.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Some people in Bam Bam still support her. They remember the good things she did for the town, and they really care about these allegations.
It's complicated.
Totally.
Ah.
Okay, let's shift gears again. We got to talk about Ukraine. It seems like every time there's a glimmer of hope for peace, something happens to dash it.
What's happened now?
Well, the U.S. and Russia finally sat down for peace talks in Riyadh.
Okay, that's good. Right.
It would be, except at the same time, Russia launched this missile strike on Sumy in northeastern Ukraine.
Oh, come on. Talk about mixed signals.
I know, right? Ukraine was furious, saying Russia's all talk and no action when it comes to peace. They want them to stop the strikes, period.
Totally understandable.
Yeah. So these talks in Riyadh, they were supposed to be about reviving the grain deal and maybe easing some sanctions on Russia. The U.S. and Russian teams talked for 12 hours, apparently.
Wow, that's a long time. Any progress?
Well, a White House source said the talks were positive, but who knows what that really means. The Ukrainian and U.S. delegations were supposed to meet after the U.S.-Russia talks, but there were no plans for direct talks between Ukraine and Russia.
So still a lot of hurdles to overcome.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, even a partial ceasefire seems difficult right now. They're talking about this ceasefire light concept just for the Black Sea, but it's complicated. Remember, Russia pulled out of the grain deal last year.
Right, right. So what's the mood like in Ukraine?
Well, their delegation said the talks with the U.S. were productive and focused, and Trump's special envoy is sounding optimistic.
But did they actually achieve anything concrete?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back in Sumy, that missile strike, it injured 65 people, 14 of them children. A school, a hospital, apartment blocks, all damaged.
Awful.
Yeah, and Prime Minister Shmyhal is calling it terror and demanding more international pressure on Russia.
So it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back?
Pretty much. And this Sumy region, it's right near the Russian border. And remember, Russia also occupied a part of Ukraine's Kursk region earlier this year.
Right, right. So it's a real flashpoint.
Definitely. And both sides are accusing each other of breaking a 30-day ceasefire agreement, specifically related to infrastructure.
Oh, so there was a ceasefire.
Yeah, but it didn't hold. Russia's claiming Ukraine attacked an oil pumping station with a drone, and they say they've shot down hundreds of Ukrainian drones in different regions. And then, just to add fuel to the fire, they launched an airstrike that injured someone in the Kyiv region.
So much for a ceasefire.
I know, right? It's disheartening. And you have to remember, Russia's been occupying about 20% of Ukrainian territory since their invasion back in 2022.
Yeah, this conflict seems like it's going to drag on for a while.
Unfortunately, it does. But at least these negotiations are happening. They're part of Trump's grand plan for a ceasefire.
We'll see if anything comes of it.
Fingers crossed. But as the Kremlin spokesman put it, there are difficult negotiations ahead, and they're only at the beginning of this path. Not exactly encouraging words.
Nope. Okay, let's shift focus to the Middle East, where tensions are, well, always high.
Yeah, we've got a situation in the occupied West Bank. It involves Hamdan Bilal, the Palestinian director who won an Oscar.
Right, for no other land?
Well,
what happened?
Well, he was detained by Israeli soldiers after some violence break out between settlers and Palestinians.
Oh, no.
Yeah, according to some Jewish American activists who were there, settlers surrounded his house in Suzia during an attack. And the co-director of the film, Yuval Abraham, claims Bilal was even beaten and taken away from an ambulance by soldiers.
That's terrible.
It is. But the IDF's telling a different story.
Yeah.
They say they detained 3 Palestinians and 1 Israeli for throwing rocks at security forces. They haven't specifically named Bilal, though.
So, conflicting accounts.
Exactly. But the activists are adamant that a dozen masked settlers attacked Suzia and then turned on them, smashing their car windows, punching them, hitting them with sticks. They even filed a complaint with the Israeli soldiers, who eventually intervened.
So things escalated quickly.
Yeah. And the IDF confirms that they did arrive to break up the fight, but they say rocks were thrown at them, and that's why they made the arrests.
It's a mess.
Totally. And it highlights the ongoing tension and violence in the region. No Other Land, the film Bilal co-directed, it focuses on Masafer Yatta, a Palestinian village in the South Hebron Hills. And, Israeli settlements in the West Bank, which Israel has occupied since 1967, they're considered illegal under international law, although Israel disputes this.
Right, right. It's one of the core issues of the conflict.
Exactly. And since the war between Israel and Hamas last year, settler violence against Palestinians has been on the rise.
It's a really volatile situation.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to something a little lighter. Maybe not lighter, but definitely strange.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so you know how Trump loves to critique everything? Well, he's been trashing a portrait of himself that hangs in the Colorado state capitol.
Really? What's he got against it?
He says it's purposefully distorted and truly the worst. But get this, he loves the same artist's portrait of Barack Obama.
Oh, come on. That's just petty.
Totally. But the best part, he recently received a new portrait, a gift from none other than Vladimir Putin.
Seriously? That's hilarious.
I know, right? Apparently it was a personal gift, according to the Kremlin spokesman. No one's actually seen it yet.
I bet it's super flattering. Like Putin riding a bear with Trump on his shoulders, conquering the world.
You never know. But anyway, after all of Trump's complaining, they took down the Colorado portrait.
So he got his way.
Basically. But then Steve Witkoff, one of Trump's envoys, confirmed the Putin portrait thing, saying it's a beautiful painting by a leading Russian artist and that Trump was clearly touched.
Of course he was.
Right. And this whole thing, it's happening as the U.S. and Russia are trying to, thaw their diplomatic relations. Remember, Trump went back to the White House. They've got those negotiations going on in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, yeah. So a little portrait diplomacy.
Exactly. Witkoff even said Putin was gracious and that he prayed for Trump after that supposed assassination attempt in Pennsylvania.
Wait, assassination attempt? I must have missed that one.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. There's this iconic picture of Trump from that rally with a bloody ear and his fist raised. He even used it on the cover of his new book.
Wow, that's intense.
It was. Anyway, Trump used this portrait drama to attack the Colorado governor, Jared Polis. But here's the thing. The Colorado portrait, it was actually paid for by a Republican through a crowdfunding campaign. And it was meant to fill a space that, get this, briefly held a picture of Putin.
You can't make this stuff up.
I know, right? It's like an episode of House of Cards. So after all this, a bipartisan committee decided to remove the painting and put it in a safe place.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, probably. The artist even said he expected some anger from a president, and another artist pointed out how hard it is to paint Trump because the way he sees himself is so different from how everyone else sees him.
Ouch.
I know. And the Colorado governor's office, they just said, we appreciate President Trump's interest in our capital artwork.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to Chad, where they're not messing around.
Oh, what happened?
Well, they're basically accusing a Sudanese general of declaring war on them.
Whoa, whoa, whoa, slow down. What's going on?
So this Sudanese general, Gen Yasser Al-Attah, who's like the second in command of Sudan's army, threatened to attack Chad's airports.
Why? What's Chad got to do with Sudan's internal conflict?
Well, he's accusing the UAE of using Chad's airports to deliver weapons to the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, who are fighting against the Sudanese army.
Oh, right, the whole civil war situation.
Yeah, it's a mess. And the Sudanese army's been saying this for a while now, that the UAE is supporting their enemies. Even UN experts think it's credible, although the UAE denies everything, of course. Sudan's even taken the UAE to the International Court of Justice over this.
Wow, so things are really heating up.
Totally. So this Gen Attah, he's at a ceremony for a slain army officer, and he just comes out and says, airports in N'Djamena and Mjaras, legitimate targets, and then he threatens Chad's president, Mahamat Déby, and throws in South Sudan too, accusing them of backing the RSF, which they also deny.
Oh man, this is getting out of control.
I know, right? And to emphasize his point, he says, my words are not a joke.
Not exactly reassuring.
Nope. Basically, the Sudanese army is frustrated because they think the UAE and some of their neighbors are letting the RSF get supplies through their territories. They even claimed back in December that the RSF was getting strategic drones.
So Chad's caught in the middle of this.
Exactly. They're officially neutral, but it's getting harder and harder to stay out of it, especially with all this instability in the region. Plus, they're hosting hundreds of thousands of Sudanese refugees.
Yeah, they can't just ignore what's happening next door.
No, they can't. So they've told this LT Gen ATA to cool it with the foolish threats and to focus on dialogue instead.
Makes sense. Talking is always better than bombing.
Right. But here's another update. The RSF just claimed they seized Al-Mala in Darfur.
Why is that significant?
Well, it's a town on a vital trade route that goes from Chad and Libya into Sudan. It's a key crossroads to El Fasher, which is a major city in Darfur.
So a strategic victory for the RSF.
Exactly. They say they inflicted heavy casualties on Allied forces and liberated the area.
We'll see how true that is.
Right. But local activists, the emergency response rooms, they're saying the RSF has closed roads, imposed a lockdown, and disrupted essential services in Omaha.
So the situation on the ground is chaotic.
Totally. No one knows the exact death toll yet, but it could be high. Communication's been cut off.
And what about the civilians?
Some have managed to flee to Kenya and the surrounding valleys, but a lot are trapped. And there were reports that many of those killed were merchants from the Zagawa community, which is the ethnic base of the joint forces who are allied with the army.
Oh, man, so this is getting really ugly.
Yeah, it is. They're saying the RSF is burning houses of people linked to the military or the government and even killing traditional leaders.
This sounds like ethnic cleansing.
It's really bad. And analysts think the RSF is trying to solidify their control in Darfur because they've been losing ground elsewhere.
So this is a way to gain leverage.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the RSF leader, Gen Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, he's vowing to keep fighting in Khartoum, even though the army's been making advances there.
So no end in sight to this conflict.
It's hard to say. The army claims they're steadily taking back key infrastructure in Khartoum, but there's a real danger of Sudan being partitioned, with different factions controlling different areas.
That would be a disaster.
It would. Okay, let's move on to some news about global health. This is a big one. UNAIDS is warning that U.S. funding cuts are going to lead to a surge in HIV infections and deaths.
Oh, no, that's terrible news.
Yeah, it's a huge setback in the fight against HIV. They're predicting 2,000 more new infections every single day because of these cuts.
That's a staggering number.
It is. And over the next 4 years, they estimate over 6 million more people will die from AIDS-related illnesses.
That's just heartbreaking. We've come so far in reducing HIV deaths.
Exactly. Global HIV deaths have decreased significantly since 2004. But now, all that progress is at risk.
So what's behind these cuts?
Well, back in January, President Trump announced this 90-day pause on foreign aid, including HIV programs, as part of a spending review. But then a lot of those USAID aid programs were just terminated.
So it's not just a pause anymore.
Nope, it's a full-on cut. And it's already having devastating consequences. Clinics are closing, people are running out of antiretroviral drugs. It's a mess.
It's like stepping back in time.
Exactly. The head of UNAIDS, Winnie Byanyima, she's saying it feels like the 1990s all over again.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And the thing is, the U.S. is the biggest funder of HIV programs globally. They've done so much good, but now they're pulling the rug out from under everyone.
So what's the plan? Is anyone else stepping up to fill the gap?
Not really, and that's the problem. Ms. Byanyima says a gradual reduction in funding would be understandable, but this sudden withdrawal is just catastrophic.
It's like they just don't care.
I know, it's frustrating. And she's giving these heartbreaking examples, like this woman in Kenya named Juliana, who relies on a U.S.-funded program. Now it's suspended, and she's terrified she'll lose access to treatment while she's breastfeeding her baby.
That's awful.
It is. And the WHO is saying 8 countries could run out of HIV drugs very soon. 20 years of progress, gone.
It's a global health crisis in the making.
Totally. But Mrs. Byanyima hasn't given up hope. He's proposing this deal to the Trump administration, where they basically market this U.S.-developed HIV drug called lenacapavir globally. It would be a win-win, bringing profits and jobs to the U.S. while also providing much-needed treatment to people around the world.
That sounds like a good solution.
It does, but we'll have to see if the administration bites.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And unfortunately, UNAIDS isn't the only UN agency facing cuts. It's a tough time for international cooperation.
It's a real shame.
Okay, let's head up north now, to the Arctic. Remember how Trump once said he wanted to buy Greenland?
Yeah, that was a weird one.
Totally. Well, guess what? Greenland's not too happy about some upcoming visits from U.S. officials.
Who's going?
Usha Vance, the vice president's wife, is planning a cultural visit. And then Mike Wartz, one of Trump's advisors, is expected to visit separately, along with Chris Wright, the energy secretary.
I can see why Greenland might be a little wary.
Right. The outgoing prime minister, Newt Ejeged, he called the whole thing aggressive and said they never even invited these people for official meetings.
Ouch.
Yeah, and Jens Frederick Nielsen, who's likely to be the next leader, accused the U.S. of disrespecting Greenland.
So a bit of a diplomatic snafu.
Totally. Now, for those who don't know, Greenland is technically controlled by Denmark, but they govern their own internal affairs. The U.S. has some long-term security interests there, and Trump, well, he's interested in their rare earth minerals.
All right, right.
So the White House announced Mrs. Vance's trip, saying she's going to visit historical sites and see a dog sled race, celebrate Greenlandic culture and unity.
Sounds innocent enough.
Yeah, on the surface. But then Waltz is expected to visit a U.S. space base for briefings, and Ejid sees his visit as a provocation, a demonstration of power, that kind of thing.
So not exactly a friendly visit.
Nope. And Nielsen's accusing them of not respecting the Greenlandic people.
This is getting tense.
It is. But the NSC spokesman, Brian Hughes, he's saying the U.S. has legitimate interests in the Arctic and wants to build partnerships while respecting Greenland's self-determination, blah, blah, blah.
The usual diplomatic speak.
Exactly. But you got to remember, Trump's got this history with Greenland. He once told the NATO Secretary General that he might try to take over Greenland with NATO support.
Seriously? That's crazy.
Now, he said they needed it for international security because favorite players were cruising around the coast, whatever that means. And he even predicted that annexation will happen.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. Back then, all the major political parties in Greenland condemned Trump's unacceptable behavior.
I bet they did.
Well, yeah. And this issue of independence from Denmark versus becoming part of the U.S., it was a central theme in their recent election. Ejid's party lost to Nielsen's party, which favors gradual independence.
So they want to be their own country, but not necessarily part of the U.S.
Exactly. And to be fair, Trump did recently say in a speech to Congress that he supports Greenland's right to self-determination and would welcome them into the U.S. if you choose.
So he's playing it cool now.
Seems like it. But recent polls show that while most Greenlanders support independence from Denmark, they definitely don't want to become part of the U.S.
I can't blame them.
Okay, now for some news from South Korea. Their constitutional court just made a big decision. They dismissed the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, which means he's back in the game.
Okay, remind me, why was he impeached in the first place?
Well, it's a whole saga. Remember,
Yeah.
President Yoon Suk-yeol tried to impose martial law, and then lawmakers tried to impeach him.
Oh, right. Things got crazy over there.
Yeah, total chaos. So Han was acting president during all this, but then lawmakers impeached him too.